Welcome to the Afghanistan Project Podcast. I'm your host, Beth Bailey, and today I am bringing back Jenn Noonkester, a retired Air Force senior NCO who deployed several times during her career, including to Afghanistan and Iraq. Jenn left the service in the months following the Afghan government's collapse after a 20-year career. She's now pursuing a degree and is involved in public service to assist her community, fellow evacuation volunteers, veterans, and anyone else who struggles with mental health. Jenn, I should have asked you before I did that. Is that still all accurate? Because that's just from the last time that we did this.
Yep. So I ended up finishing my degree in my bachelor's degree in astronomy, and so now I'm pursuing a master's degree. So
excellent. In astronomy as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like this is so off the cuff now, but it has to stay. So that's really, really cool. I'm so happy for you. That sounds like a labor of love and something really neat. So we're here today not to talk about neat things that are happy. Like, we're talking about a super devastating topic that is always in my inbox, but not from the level that you're in this. So we're talking about the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program and some of the individuals that you've been supporting in that program who've been kind of left in limbo now with the new Presidential Directive that only allows 7,500 USRAP applicants into the country in the next fiscal year, and none of them are Afghans. So without further ado, Jenn, I'd love for you to talk to me about the families that you're supporting and what they're going through right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do my best to keep it lighthearted. I know Sean and Kate and numerous other people have come in, and I know they share a lot of the same, I'm going to say the same journey, since the January, I'm going to say decree. That's probably not the right word, but that's what I'm going with. And so we'll kind of start there. So around December, I had a family that had finally made it into the care hotel. We had been bouncing this family all around Afghanistan, working really hard to keep this family out of the Taliban clutches. The individual was a former translator. His supervisor still very much in the picture. And we knew what would happen when he was captured because the Taliban was pretty straightforward in the threats that they were making to him, to his family, and to his friends. So it was finally, after 3.5, almost 4 years of waiting, it felt like maybe that group that we started with in August of 2021, maybe we were going to get our first win. So we were all super excited. All the families knew that we had one member. They didn't know who it was, but we had one member that had finally made it to a hotel and was maybe going to make progress. Then the administration switched, and he got his, I'm going to say, eviction notice from the care team and was sent out of the hotel. The first night was really rough. We had to talk through some things and definitely did some mental health stuff to try to get him to be okay with his new situation, and explain to him a setback now doesn't mean that it's always going to be a permanent setback. So we spent a lot of time talking about that. Word got out that the policies were changing for my P2 families, my P1 families, as well as my other SIVs. And so shortly after the notice went out, not even to the Afghans, but just in general, just on social media, which, by the way, is a terrible way to find out that your case is going to experience some significant hiccups, if it even still exists. The family started to bombard my phone. I was at work, and I'm several hours behind DC. And there's nothing like getting frantic calls from people that are talking about the worst of the worst coming to fruition, with their kids crying in the background because they don't know why they're scared, but they're scared. And so we thought maybe it was just going to be a short-lived thing, and perhaps maybe things would take a turn for the better. But that's not what happened. It just slowly started to get worse. So we spent a lot of time talking to the multiple families and reassuring them, hey, you do have an active case. You have been considered. We've seen progress already. We've just got to wait and let the rocking boat kind of sit and try to figure it out. And unfortunately, what was it, in the end of October or late September, I think it was actually, when the new guidance was dropped, basically saying, hey, P1, P2, sorry about your luck, Chuck, but you're not coming. Our 7,500 visas are no longer going to go to our partners who protected and defended our service members, our coalition members, and our civilian counterparts. Instead, it's going to go to another country that I'll reserve my opinion on that. And so within a matter of hours, I had my phone blew up. Not literally, but it sure did feel like it. My phone's on vibrate because I don't like having the chimes go off when I'm holding meetings or I'm talking to my boss or anything like that. And so my pocket was vibrating so much that somebody asked me if I was okay. They thought maybe there was an emergency, and they were like, hey, do you need to get that? And so I explained to them what was going on. And the fact that all of these people that we had fought for so long, that had fought with us and just wanted a chance at safety, all of their hopes and dreams were coming crashing down in a matter of hours. And so we kind of talked through that a little bit. And slowly but surely, it got to the point where we had to make the call. I had to make the call to tell the families, hey, look, it's a no right now. I can't do anything for you at this point. The door has closed. I don't know where to go from here, but this is not an avenue for you at this time. We need to find a different way to go. And most of them took it well, given the circumstances. I mean, I've got everybody from an interpreter to an interpreter's family to a police officer to my partners as well. And sorry about that. My little squeak box is definitely trying to get in this podcast today. And so he might be the comic relief for this. And so, yeah, it was really kind of heartbreaking to have to explain to them that there's a good chance that if they're going to get out, it's not going to be by the hand of the U.S., that we essentially did betray them when we sold them out. And so I had a lot of them that acknowledged it with, I appreciate your effort. I'm sorry you're feeling this way. I'm sorry we let you down. And I was like, well, I'm sorry I let you down. And so we did that whole back and forth of, well, who's going to be the most humble? But I also had one person, and I didn't tell you this before. I also had one person that tried to take her own life. She's still in the hospital. We can't follow up with her. She can't be contacted by a U.S. number based on where she's at. And so you sit there and you think about that, and you're like, we didn't just fail them. Like, we sentenced them to death, and we're the ones that have to deliver that message because the actual messaging is not going out the way it should. So, yeah, that's been pretty much how it's gone.
Yeah, I think that when you messaged me, you hadn't told anyone yet that the door was closed. And so that's new information to me. And, you know, I was hearing the noise about the Presidential Directive coming down the line. And I said, hey, look, there's so much desperation in this community and so much terror already that adding this right now when we don't know it is just not a good plan. Like, it's just not a good plan. And then the word broke that small numbers of USRAP people were getting contacted by IOM. And I thought, okay, well, that needs to go out because people are already talking about it and they're going to think, oh, look, it's happening. And like, it's not. There's a small number of people being contacted. They're not going to be processed through the USRAP. The USRAP is not restarted. And then 2 days later, the PD, or a day after my piece came out, the PD drops, you know, and it's just like, how could you hurt this population more? Right. I don't know how you could. At this point, it's just like, I'm not surprised. We've seen suicides, successful suicides in the USRAP population. I'm sure there are some that have not been reported. Of course, you're going to be devastated. If you qualified for USRAP, it's because you supported us, and now the Taliban could easily want you dead.
Absolutely.
So how would you rather die? I would certainly not want to die in a Taliban prison as a woman.
No.
And be raped until I am, because this is what has happened in Taliban prisons to women before. They are raped until they're impregnated, forced to have abortions, raped until they are so sick from that they get killed. These are all things that have been reported in Taliban prisons that the UN Special Rapporteur for Afghanistan, I think, Richard Bennett, is looking into those things. We know that women are being gang raped in Afghan prisons by the Taliban because the Taliban film it and
Absolutely.
send it to the women. And then one of the women showed it to the Guardian. So it's like, where, what is the future like for these people? I already know of one woman in the USRAP who was sent back, deported back, and she immediately, 2 days later, ended up in Taliban custody. So, this is all, it's not all just raising alarm bells and saying, oh, this is terrible for nothing. It is terrible. This is absolutely devastating. And for someone like you, I mean, Jenn, you've been helping these families for years and telling them, just hold on, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. How hard is that for you to have to then deliver that news that it's not going to happen?
I'm going to say my therapist probably has been able to buy a beach house. Yeah, so I definitely have to give a lot of credit to my support network. I'm a retired senior NCO. We're used to taking care of those under our charge. We're used to taking care of the people that take care of us. And it's always been duty above self. And so to have to admit, number one, defeat for something that we shouldn't have to do, and take ownership of a problem that we didn't cause, but we were trying to do what was right. And then to feel like our government basically just kind of like gave us a middle finger and told us, hey, figure out what you can, but best of luck. It's not my problem anymore. You kind of feel a little sold out. I know I've had my ups and downs, and like I said, like I without a good, strong support network, I would have had a lot of hiccups.
Yeah, it is so hard. And I'm glad that there's a therapist who understands that. I feel like, it's such a nuanced thing to be taking part in that
Yeah.
I've talked to other people who are in therapy, and I remember one particular individual who was like, oh yeah, I was in therapy for one thing, and then I mentioned this, and my therapist is like, wait, what? What are you I mean, it's just such a constantly, especially for people like you. I mean, for me, I'm enough, I think, on the outskirts. It's a weird, I have a different involvement level. And so for somebody who has to field those calls and hear those, it's
Yeah.
just, that's really, really, really difficult. Do you want to talk about these families a little bit more in depth and explain what they did and how they qualified for USRAP and what their service for the US was like?
Absolutely. So I'll start with my partners. So we'll be a little bit cagey on the details, only because they haven't been identified, and we're trying to keep it that way. But I was an air advisor down in Kandahar, and I had partners that helped us tremendously. We were there during an increase in green on blue attacks, which is where people that are either, they somehow or another they're convinced to turn on their U.S. and coalition counterparts for whatever their motivation is. We were seeing a sharp increase in that, and we had some pretty good reporting that it was coming. And so my counterparts and some of the other professionals down in that area definitely made it so that I could come home, as well as several of my other advisors. So honestly, without them, I wouldn't be here today. And I look at that and I think back and I'm like, wow, you know what? I shouldn't be here today. I'm only here because of them. And so that family, I had two partners that I was able to find. The other ones I still haven't been able to find. And even if I found them today, I would still move heaven and earth to try to find a way to help them. Just because how do you justify it? Like, they gave me my life and now I'm denying theirs. And so one of them was my direct counterpart. He was an officer, and we spent a lot of time talking together. We did a lot of good work trying to recognize the enlisted member in there. We were just doing really solid work to try to teach him how to appreciate everybody as a whole, as opposed to just an individual that is only doing one thing. So it was enlisted were looked very down upon. And so one of the goals was to try to figure out how to improve morale. And so this officer took it upon himself to find a way to try to improve that and bring his team together. He was very community focused and just a tremendous guy all around. He ended up in Kandahar towards the end. He was not one of the ones that protected the base towards the very end. We'll talk about that one in a second. But he was there at the very end, and he was trying to gather up the last little bit of stuff that he had that didn't need to fall into the Taliban's hands. And then he made his way to another city, which is where he's bed down today. He and his wife sacrificed so much to try to get their kids out. Because they realized that, you know, they're older people and they wanted to make sure that their kids had a good shot at life. And that is ultimately what drove him to, number one, serve his country, number two, work alongside us, and then number three, do what he did, which was send his kids on to get them closer to Kabul, and then stay back to try to sanitize that area. I had another partner that was an NCO with me. And we spent a lot of time just kind of goofing around and doing some good studies. And we talked a lot about culture and we had a lot of exchanges. And he was one that that I have to say I admire a lot. So he knew what was coming. He saw the threat reporting and he was watching his country collapse. And he sent his wife and his two kids on to another location so that they could be safe. And they all understood that this meant he may not come back. And he stayed and he defended the airport. There's nothing like watching people fly to safety while you're sitting there being told that bad things are going to happen to you. But knowing that in the end, that is what you were willing to do because you felt it was going to protect your country and your countrymen. So when I think of service before self, I don't think there's a better example of that than what he did. And he was able to evacuate all essential equipment out of there and keep it out of the Taliban hands. So that was pretty humbling. And then I have another one that ended up, he is now considered an SIV because once he retired, he got into translator duties. And he was a phenomenal guy as well. Former pilot, did some really great things while he was down south, and just a tremendous guy. Very, very giving, very willing to take care of other people. He's had a couple close calls where they've identified him, but he's very crafty and has been able to sneak away. I've had him. He was one of the first families to reach out for help, and it was through his advisor. So that one was a really hard call to make between him, and then he has some other relatives that were in his care as well. And we used a lot of those families to try to help with some of the other efforts that we were doing. So medical needs and stuff like that, we were able to kind of use that to try to help. So these people were all sacrificing so much, just in the hopes that maybe one other person, it didn't necessarily have to be them, but maybe this person might make it out, even though they might not. Another family I had, his COM approval came through back in 2018. So he is a victim of the first Trump changes. He got so close. We had fought tooth and nail, argued, was supposed to be on so many flights, but kept getting bumped out. We never got a straightforward reason. But it was just him and his wife, just two people. And he was so close. We finally, like, after 3 years of fighting and trying and calling and emailing, we finally got him to a hotel. We finally got him to the care hotel. And I remember him calling me and telling me just how happy he was and that I could finally sleep. Because for the first time in, well, I want to think think he submitted his package and was done being a translator and interpreter around 2018. So the first time in like 7 years, he finally felt like he was safe and he had hope. It was the first time he had reunited with his wife since the fall of Kabul and Afghanistan. And so they finally had hope. And that hope spread over to the entire group. Again, none of them know each other's names. They don't know who they are. But the idea that we finally had somebody that was getting close was tremendous. And then the last family is a female law enforcement. Her and her kids. They've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations. Given their circumstances, I can't go into a lot of details. But they would have been a really great family to have here. Kids are very passionate. They were super excited about like everything, and while the wife had some stuff she needed to work through, rightfully so, she had a lot of hope. She had a lot of hope, and yeah, that's pretty much the rundown of the last couple of families that I had remaining.
Do you want to say anything about the Christian families you were trying to help before? I think that there's this idea that, well, I'll start by saying this. During the fall, I remember all the stories about, the last Jewish Afghan was airlifted to Israel and everyone was trying to get Christians out. I know Ben Owen was involved in that heavily, and, there were people trying to get Afghans, LGBTQ Afghans out of the country before they could be killed by the Taliban. And there have been people accused of, like, I think the Taliban calls it sodomy, who've been killed or at least stoned. I don't know if they've been stoned to death. I should look that up before posting this. I want to say that
a couple were stoned to death.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you're correct. And if not, I will record something and place it in here so that everyone knows that that's not true. But I'm fairly certain that that was true. There were all these groups that everyone knew were going to be at extreme peril. And it almost seemed like, oh, well, they're all out. And that's not true. I know groups that are still trying to help LGBTQ Afghans. I know groups that are still trying to help Christians. One Christian family just got out. The only family I know who got out through USRAP after January 20th. And it was like in early spring this year, and they were able to get out. But tell me about the Christian families you'd been trying to help and what they went through and what you went through.
Yeah, so I had two. Both of them were very hesitant to tell me that they were Christian. And you kind of figure it out through the subtle cues. So even though they were practicing members of a church, they were still so afraid of somebody overhearing them say something that may convince somebody that they're not Muslim, that they basically would do their prayers, but it would be a very silent prayer. I had one that was there was one Christian store in a town where one of my individuals was hiding, and I remember they were so excited to find each other. And they couldn't really talk much about their faith. But it was just the idea that there was one other person in the country that maybe understood what they were going through, as they were losing their identities, they were losing their sense of safety, they were losing just themselves as a whole. And so for a moment, they had somebody there with them. And the person went one day and they were talking to them, and like they were exchanging Bible verses, but they were doing it very cryptically. And the next morning they were going to come back and they were going to talk about it a little bit. But when they came back towards the shopkeeper was apprehended and has moved on from this life. And so it was kind of devastating to hear what happened. And this was probably about 2 years ago. And I think at that point, we understood just how much that desire to stamp out any last Christian faith in that area, just how strong that desire actually is. The other family I had, I don't know if they were ever found out that they were Christian, but they were in hiding for a while, and eventually it got to the point where I think either the son was identified because of his age and was taken, or because he accidentally was carrying something that had religious text on it that wasn't Muslim. And the son was kidnapped and is believed to not be dead, but is now undergoing religious education. And his family hasn't seen him since.
Yeah, and that's just horrifying. I'd like to mention the other possibilities that could be going on just because he's a young boy in Afghanistan. And if he's an attractive young boy in Afghanistan, we know that the Taliban are engaging in bachabazi, which is the dancing boy practice that they said was outlawed during their first regime. But now we have pictures and video of the Taliban using little boys as basically women. They have them dance for them, they dress them up like women, and then they abuse them sexually.
Yep.
Until they are no longer attractive. And at that point, their future
It's
is very much up for grabs, what's going to happen to them. And as you can imagine, having been treated that way for so long, you're going to have a very difficult life, even if you are let go and not killed.
Yep.
So that's one possibility. We also know that the Taliban are employing child soldiers. And so that's another possibility. Religious education is obviously the most likely because we know the madrasa system has been installed in so many schools inside of Afghanistan, and that's how the Taliban came to pass. So they know how it works, and they know how to create the next generation of little fighters, which is just devastating for people who have to watch their children go do that.
Yeah.
So
if I can comment on that.
Please.
I think it's also important to note that a lot of us that have seen the threats from the Taliban to these families can attest that that still is very much an active threat towards these families. I've had another family that had a kid, the oldest son was kidnapped, put into that child soldier education camp. We have threats for the other families, like the partner family I was talking about, where the dad stood his ground. The threats towards that family, they've already told us that the son's either going to be killed or he's going to become a child soldier. They've got a very grim outlook for the daughters. And so pretending like they're not doing that is ridiculous because we all know it's happening.
Yeah, it's and especially because you're seeing it, that's the frustrating part where the media has not been able to cover this, I think, to the extent that they need to, all of these developments. And part of that is because there was a lot of media coverage of all these things up until the Ukraine invasion. And then we had Israel and Gaza. We've just had a slew of things that are taking attention away from this crisis. And you guys have like a wealth of information that just isn't being listened to or reported upon. Yeah. And it's really unfortunate because then you see India bringing Amir Khan Mataki to come visit and putting an ambassador in Kabul, or opening up the embassy in Kabul. I don't know if they actually put the ambassador in it, but they did open their embassy in Kabul. And all these groups just appeasing these people, and you all know who they are because you see what they do.
Yep.
I had another. Oh yeah, can you talk at all about the pathways? Because I think for USRAP applicants who might be viewing this, it might be nice to hear some of the pathways that you're exploring or the avenues of hope that might be out there, or just that you are, anything that you could give that would make people not feel like they've been abandoned fully.
So the one thing I will start with is number one, if you're an Afghan listening to this, you need to start doing your homework. You need to start looking for your own pathways. You need to start looking at resumes. You need to start working on your CVs, and you need to start looking for an employment. The days of grants and free money are gone. And the quicker you realize that, the more likely you are to find your pathway out. The second thing is understand that you're not the only one trying to find your way out. So you need to be proactive. If you find a way, seize that way, and give it your best shot. For me, my guys we were looking at, for the ones that have COM cases that are approved, we were looking at cheaper places to move them to. But even cheaper places to move them to still require the visas, they still require the flights, they still require the lodging, they still require a lot of money. So that's the other thing, is that when you're looking at these places, make sure that you're checking that, number one, you can afford it and for longer than just a couple days. And then number two, that the case is actually active. We've had a couple of times where we've gotten ready to pull the trigger only to find out that maybe the case wasn't as far along as we thought. There were some hiccups, an HR letter for some reason that worked totally fine. All of a sudden they were like, oh, I don't like this anymore. And so they said, you need a different HR letter. Even though there was another HR letter, and you've got a stack of HR letters that are like 6 inches thick and they all say the same thing. And they're all different dates and they're all valid people because you talked to them. And so I think having the realization that this isn't going to be quick anymore is going to be a huge help.
Sure. Yeah, it's not. And we need more SIVs because otherwise all these SIV applicants are really in trouble. Yeah. Are you talking about the COM revocations and denials that started happening, like the batched denials that if you had the same LOR provider? There were a couple big ones. I don't want to name them here, but yeah.
So we didn't get any of those.
Okay.
Ours was they didn't like one of the HR letters. Because there was like a different spelling in a name. Instead of it being an I, it was an E or something ridiculous like that. Where you're just like, come on, man, it's an Arabic name.
Transliteration issue, basically, right? Yeah, it's not a.
Like, and so then you show them a copy of the previous test error where it was an I and not an E, and like then you explain to them, hey, they're just following the proper documentation. Well, that's not valid anymore. You need to contact that person. And then, I mean, we're 4 years into this. People have checked out, especially if they don't have any skin in the game. So trying to get these people to go back and rewrite a letter for companies that they no longer work with, where they've got no vested interest, it's just not happening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I can't even imagine because I've gotten out of that game because I could not continue doing that and covering stuff. It was so difficult. I had people coming to me all the time with, help. And it was really hard to keep up with all that, but it was a real huge education in the SIV program. And the interesting thing, because I mean, Sean Van Diver and John Moses in the most epic mashup of all time, I could not believe it happened, came on at the same time to talk about that Ben Franklin Fellowship article.
Yes.
Which, he
Great
talks about,
by the way.
Civis Legatus talks about, how names, people are, they applied with a fully different name and It's like, bro, please look at these things. It's that kind of thing where that's not somebody applying with a fully different name. That's literally, is it, I'm trying to think of a good transliteration issue that I've seen personally, Mohammed or Mohammed or,
Mohammed. Yeah.
Right. Mohammed or Muhammad,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Like, have you taken Arabic? Please show me where there's, how many times is there not even a vowel in these names? And like, yes, I don't speak Dari or Pashto, but I guarantee you it's probably the same in terms of there's not always a vowel there. And so you are going to interpret how you say that name and what little, anyway,
yes.
I'm done. I'm going into the weeds here and I'm going to get out of them. But, actually I wanted to mention, go ahead. You go ahead first.
Say, you bring up a very good point to consider. So as people are starting to look back through their files, understand that they are getting to that level of detail to try to figure out whether or not they're going to approve your SIV and issue that visa. Is they're going back through and they're looking to see it. So if you know that your name was once spelled with an O and now it's spelled with a U, now's the time to get that corrected in your documents.
For sure.
Get ahead of it.
And I have no problem with the State Department doing that and getting into that level of granular detail because I want Civis Legatus and all of his ilk to be just put to shame with the level of vetting that is given to our SIVs before they get here. I want everyone to be 100% clear before they get here. So if that's the thing, Go for it.
Yeah,
You're right. Do it. Fix it. Get ready to explain it. And,
and I think
we'll
that's
see where it
something that a
goes.
lot of people like overlook is that none of us are saying skirt the system, give our Afghans special treatment because we drink tea with them. If they're not trustworthy and they shouldn't be here, don't bring them.
Right.
We
Yep.
want vetted people. They want vetted people. I mean, I can't
Yep.
tell you how many different Afghans I've had that call and tell me, "Hey, just so you know, this person is has traded, and they are now pro-Taliban." And then they send me the
Yep.
proof, and then we do what we have to do with that information. So they want it too. They are just as invested in the security of whatever nation they're going to go to, as well as their partners, because they still consider us partners.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great thing. We should use all that information and make sure that everyone is set. It would drive me crazy because I covered a lot of those comm revocations and denials that, for people who aren't aware, state was very concerned that certain people were selling their LORs, or that in some cases someone had taken a valid LOR and copied it and given it to somebody else to use. And so they started saying, anybody with this LOR, ineligible, fully ineligible, and you have to provide a new, I should say, letter of recommendation, because not everybody is in the acronym game here. You have to provide a new one. It didn't matter. Every single person who'd used that, invalid. And it made me so angry at first, because I thought, this person's papers are fully legit. How did that happen? And I would ask, can you please tell me who's a bad actor here? Because if somebody's coming to me and asking me to write about their case, I want to know, tell me, and they can't. I understand that, but it is, there are plenty of people who have had, say, like, derogatory information, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that derogatory information is ridiculous. And
Yeah.
then there are some times where it's not. And so it's really important, if I knew somebody had done something not good, I would not be supporting them.
Absolutely.
So it's very hard when you're on this side to try to understand what's going on when you're outside that system. And that's why I trust the State Department to do it.
Yep.
Because it's not for me. I'm not trained in that. I'm not the vetter. They are. And I'm glad that they and all the other agencies are. I wanted to say something because I just remembered this. James Seddon had another important point about that article, and obviously it's too late to talk about that in its own episode, but I want to see if I can find that and elucidate upon it here so that people are aware of what it was. It was so important, and somehow we didn't cover it when we talked about the there's no way I'm going to find it. My entire...
The Ben Franklin article?
Yeah, the Ben Franklin article. There was a whole another subset of things that he brought up that was just yes, exactly that. But it was too late, obviously, to, you know what? I bet if I just keep going, because we're just... Okay, yeah. Here we go. One of the most harmful misconceptions out there is that surely by now all the real Afghan allies are here. This is perfect for this episode because you just talked about some of the real Afghan allies that you know personally who are not here. He says that's simply not true. I personally know some who aren't. The process under Biden was excruciatingly slow, especially at the beginning, and done correctly, proper vetting takes a long time. Many true wartime allies are still waiting. So I thank you to James for bringing that up, and
Absolutely.
It fits perfectly right here, and it's so important and so true that there are many people stateside who still need an SIV who don't have it. The zero units who were trained by the CIA and are some of the most heavily vetted Afghans out there, and many of them are still lacking permanence and protections inside this country right now. So
and then what do you do? When it expires, do you really send them back? You know what you're sending them back to.
Oh gosh, if they sent the zeros back, that would be a slaughterhouse. That would just, you can't do that.
I would say anybody they send back at this point, you're just executing them.
Blood on your hands.
Whatever you want to say you're doing, protecting immigration or whatever. Anybody that set foot on American soil is probably not long for this earth.
Yeah, I don't even want to imagine. Jen, do you have anything else you want to bring up? Any other things about USRAP? Anything? The floor is yours.
No, not really. I think it's also important to remind the advocates and the people like you. Maybe you don't have direct contact with families, but you definitely still have contact with Afghans. That it's okay to feel the way you feel. It sucks. There's no other way to say it. To go from being called heroes and having little kids draw pictures of you to telling stories to their friends about how their American heroes are out there with them and they're still standing by them and how excited they are that they're going to make it to the US and they hope one day to be a doctor or a veterinarian or a church leader because they want to help their community. To watch those kids go from hope like that to crying of starvation in the background of a phone call because their organs are shutting down because World Food Program got shut down and there's no aid coming in, to kids having to make the decision that either they still try for education or they tell mommy and daddy, hey, it costs money and we don't have money. Can you just teach me what you know and maybe we have bread tonight? To having them kind of give up, uh, that's tough. That's tough. And trying to minimize it isn't going to help anybody. And then don't be afraid to tell them. One of the hardest things I had to do was to tell them that maybe it's time to look at different pathways. So I think Sean said it in one of his episodes with you, where he's like, "Hey, you got to call it what it is, and just tell them you can't whitewash it anymore. You just have to be honest." And I'm not gonna lie, it sucks. It sucks really bad. So expect the wind to get knocked out of you for that day, maybe for a couple of days while those reactions are coming. But just know that at the end of the day, those Afghans truly do appreciate the fight that all of us have done. Even if we're not the heroes of this story, we're still heroes in their stories. And I think that's important to remember is that even though the hope may have not resulted in a win, for 4 years we were somebody's hope, and that's what kept them going. So we will always remain that beacon of hope, even if it's a little bit dim at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not on anyone in the community. None of this, it rests on their shoulders. Being there for 4+ years to support people, that's not a small thing. And, there might even be anger at you, immediately, but that's not, no one should take that on themselves. I mean, this is it's so difficult. I can imagine all kinds of responses, and none of them are advocates' faults, but I think you're right. It's time to be honest and to figure out, where does the next bit of hope come from? Because there's always hope,
Right.
and the one thing that I've seen volunteers do, I likened it to being in like a blackened obstacle course. And there were some people who figured out, okay, here's how I scale this obstacle. And then there were some people who just figured out how to be a light in that darkness. Everybody had their own little job and we all worked together. And unfortunately, somebody keeps changing the obstacles out. But then somebody always figures out the new obstacle, right? It just keeps evolving and we evolve with it. I don't see anyone giving up fully. Fully see that there will be people finding light in the darkness, where we can, and trying to get people on a path to being safe and in a peaceful setting, you know. So we'll just keep on plugging away, I guess.
There you go. It's not over till it's
Well,
over.
you're right. You're right. It is not over till it's over. And it's okay to not be okay. You're right. I think that's a really important thing. It's okay to not be okay and to just need to rest for a little bit and come back. Everyone has to do that on occasion. I've done it on multiple occasions. So it's vital. Self-care. So practice self-care. And as my friend John Moses always says, practice sabar. So anyway, all of those things together. Well, Jenn, thank you so much for being here and talking about these really, really hard things. I so appreciate you doing that with me today.
Yeah, and thanks for all you do. I know you get it and you probably are like, "Oh yeah, thanks." But no, honestly, like it means a lot to us, and honestly, like I'm pretty sure some of my Afghans still listen to your stuff. Um So I think they figured out a way to kind of beat the system to hear it. And I know it means a lot to them too. Even if the families are in the States are the ones that are listening, they're still able to go back and tell them like, hey, your story hasn't died yet. So you still give a lot of hope to a lot of people, even if it's just covering that terrible Ben Franklin article.
Oh my gosh. I think it's really important to do and make people know that they are being heard and that they're not being forgotten, you know? So I'm so happy to be here. It's the privilege of my life to be doing this to help other people and make sure that at least in the chaos we all can be together and suffer together, I guess.
Right. We'll all be one trauma bond family.
Oh my gosh, so trauma bonded. It's not even funny. I sent like the most absolutely unhinged message on LinkedIn the other day and I was like, wow, this is a special group of people. But I knew the person who was getting it was going to get it, you know? And it's like, wow, I don't know. I don't know what this is, but
God, I know who that was.
So sorry, buddy. I just needed to blow off some steam before I exploded. Thank you. Anyway, thank you all, everybody who is here, who's listening, Tasha Core, and hope to see all of you again soon.